morning. I'm Scott Shepard, principal of Marengo Community High School. We want to welcome you to the 2012 Veterans Day program. Hey, Gene, are those guys ready? Please rise for the presentation of the colors, then remain standing for the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. On behalf of the students, staff, administration, and boards of education of the Marengo area school districts, I would like to welcome each of you to Marengo Community High School and our 2012 Veterans Day program. It is great to bring together all of the 3rd through 12th grade students from Locust Elementary, Marengo Middle, Riley Elementary and Junior High, Zion Lutheran, and Marengo Community High School. We want to especially welcome all of our veterans that are in attendance with us today. Each year we try to add something special to the program. Today we are excited to be broadcasting this event live and then on demand on IHSA.tv. The purpose of this program is to say thank you to our veterans and those currently serving. Because of IHSA TV and one of our teachers, Mr. Nate Wright, and several students that are videoing, this special event allows us to honor those serving around the world and those that could not make it here today. I want to say hi to my dad, who's watching in Lincoln, Nebraska. He and my mom, along with my Uncle Ray, are watching today as they are both World War II veterans. They were both in the Navy. My Uncle Floyd and my wife's grandfather, Papa John, who are both Army career men in it for many years serving our country. Thank you for your service and your great example you have been to our family. Several years ago, our school started a beginning nursing program to give students experience with caring for others. This year, Ms. Shanks and our BNIT students have again helped bring several veterans from the Florence Nursing Home here in Marengo. Would you please join me in welcoming these special guests? I'd like to take a moment and thank several people who have made this day possible. First, I want to thank Dr. Bertrand and our Board of Education for their continued support of this program. My office staff, my secretary, Dawn Seaman, who sends out, I believe we sent out over 500 invitations to local veterans to attend this event. Our teachers, our maintenance personnel, Dan Kane and Dave Engelbrecht, our technology people, and many of the student groups that have done just a great job of putting this whole program together. Our boys and girls basketball team stayed late after their scrimmage on Saturday to help set up the chairs. I definitely want to thank our four-wheel drive gang for the parking the trucks out front with the flags. They look awesome. Great job. I appreciate all that our student bodies and staffs have done in helping us honor the veterans today. The red, white, and blue looks awesome up in the stands. The elementary and junior high students have made many signs and posters that can be reviewed at the reception following the program. I want to thank each building principal for their support of this program. As you drove in this morning, you might have noticed a helicopter parked across the street. No, the Franks family and the Lindow families have not purchased a new toy. With the assistance from Staff Sergeant and Recruiter Giuseppe Ferrielli, we are fortunate to have the Illinois National Guard crew and Chief Warrant Officer 4 McCormick, Captain Gregory Canfield, and Sergeant Daniel Roth here with us this morning. Would they please stand and be recognized? Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out this morning. As you entered the building this morning, hopefully you saw a picture of a Purple Heart monument that will be placed at Calvin Spencer Park as a part of an Eagle Scout project. Our very own MCHS student, Jacob Ulbrich, has planned this project and is raising $5,000 for this great community service. Tonight from 5 to 8 p.m. at McDonald's, they will be giving a portion of their receipts to this project. Please come out and support him. I also want to thank Mike Migalki for sharing his historical artifacts with us and also sharing the information we used in the video this year. I want to thank Vince Long for bringing in the motorcycle out front. That's always a highlight of this program. Part of Veterans Day is to remember the past, to learn from it and instill a sense of patriotism in the youth and prepare them to lead for the future. Whereas many schools today are not in session, the Marengo area schools choose to come today and to educate our students and recognize our veterans. There are many people in this community who are helping create a bright future for our students. I would ask at this time that all staff members from the various schools please stand and be recognized. The job that they do is critical for the success of our future, and I appreciate each and every one of our staff members and the time and effort that they put in for our kids. Today we come together as one community to say thank you to all of our veterans and their families for the sacrifices they have made and continue to make for our freedoms. It is not only appropriate for us to have this program during the day, but it is vital for us to pass on the importance of citizenship and community service to the next generation. It is my hope that we never take our freedoms for granted. The students and community of Marengo say thank you, veterans. Our Student Advisory Council was one of the groups that helped first put this program together 5 years ago. Today, senior member Shelby Voss and 5 of the other members will present the branch flags.
There are men and women among us who have impacted all of our lives. Every time we vote, go to school, have a meeting, or make a decision about the direction of our own lives, we need to remember that we have these freedoms because there are people who have given themselves so unselfishly. The people we are talking about are the individuals who have served in our armed forces. Many of us have been directly affected because we have relatives who have given to our country through their military service. It could be a husband, wife, parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, brother, or sister. At this time, we will be presenting the flags representing the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Coast Guard. As each flag is announced and presented, if you have served or have a relative who has served in that branch, please stand and remain standing until the next flag is presented. The United States Army. The United States Coast Guard. The United States Marines. The United States Air Force. the United States Navy, to our honored veterans, as you could see by the number of people who stood as each flag was presented, we have been touched by your willingness to serve and defend. We share a very special bond, and we say this to you now and always. We are proud, we are grateful, and we will remember. Thank you for your service.
Marengo Middle School and Marengo High School choirs will now sing Unsung Heroes. The Marengo area schools have had a great relationship with our local American Legion. Please join me in welcoming Marengo Post 192 Commander Gene Boxleitner.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome, everybody. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce past Commander Dale Carpenter, who will do the roll call.
I will go through all the branches. I will start with the Army. William Adams, Captain. Would you please stand when your name is read? If we can, we will hold the applause to the end when I will present the whole Army group. Tom Anderson, Sergeant First Class. Raymond Ayers, Chaplain, Captain. Eugene Bach, E5. John Becklinger, Specialist 4. Bob Beggs, Sergeant First Class. Gene Boxleitner, PFC. Bill Brandt, Sergeant. Roger Brandt, First Lieutenant. John Brandt, Sergeant. Jack Carter, Sergeant. Donald Carlson, Spec 5. Ron Church, Specialist 4. Gilbert Cineros, Sergeant. Philip Cook, E4. Ken Cooper, PFC. John Cooper, Sergeant, Staff Sergeant. Donald Craney, Specialist 4. Nathan Croco, Specialist. Gerald Crone, PFC. Larry Dockerman, Specialist 4. William Eichbach, E4. Tom Fashionbauer, Warrant Officer. Giuseppe Fiorillo, Sergeant. George Franzovic, Corporal. Bruce Geisen, Sergeant. Charles Glasigo, E4. Butch Hacker, PFC. Elroy Hilbert, First Lieutenant. Ronald Hogan, E4. Melvin Kamholtz, Sergeant. Bill Kays, Specialist 4. Neil Kintz, Sergeant. Dennis Kaplan, Specialist 4. Bob Kaplan, E5. Joe Lewis, Specialist 4. Joe Long, W4. John Mahone, PFC. Andrew Maines, Specialist 4. John Martin, E4. Ron Meyer, Master Sergeant. Harvey Myers, E4. Robert Montgomery, E4. Victor Mortensen, Sergeant. Herbert Mueller, Specialist 4. Leonard Nagel, Technician. Don Nemec, Sergeant. Jose Palacios, Sergeant E5, Rod Popey, Specialist 3. Herb Rangel, Sergeant. Bob Redensdorf, Sergeant. Willie Retke, E7. George Rossett, Private. Dan Rudy, Chief Warrant Officer. Paul Roof, Sergeant. Kenneth Schiffer, E5. Ken Schmars, PFC. Richard Schnull, Sergeant. Dwayne Sproles, Sergeant. Robert Watkins, 45th Infantry. David Whiteside, Commander Sergeant Major. Gordon Wilkie, E4. Henry Wilkins, Specialist 5. Dr. Robert Jordan, Sergeant. Keith Hopper, Specialist 4. Zachary Woodruff, Specialist 4. Bill Courier, Specialist 4. Neil Dow, Sergeant. Jamie Jackson, Specialist 4. Robert Schultz, Corporal. Jack Palelli, Staff Sergeant. Arthur Brenning, Corporal. Ron Richardson, Specialist 4. Harold Wittig, Corporal. Gary Dow, E5. John Sorensen, E5. Michael Trout, Specialist. Ken Deerdorf, Master Sergeant. John Henning, Sergeant First Class. Larry Summers, Specialist 4. For your applause, the Army. The Navy. William Dione, Petty Officer, First Class. Rusty Dowell, Coxswain. Robert Duncan, Seaman First Class. Harvey Federitz, AMM Second Class. Les Garman, Airman. Bob Higgins, Petty Officer, Second Class. Wayne Hintz, Mechanic. Bob Buzz Marks, Petty Officer, Second Class. Steve Otis, Builder, First Class, Seabees. John Riddell, Petty Officer, Third Class. Ken Stein, Second Class, IC2. Adolf Schweck, 81. John Vesquez, E5. Lowell Wagner, Machinist Mate, Third Class. George Partlow, Lieutenant. Patrick Dalton, E6 Petty Officer, First Class. Ronald Williams, Second Class. Ted Kutcher, the Navy. Coast Guard. Brad Johnson, Petty Officer, 2nd Class. Gary Kowal, Petty Officer, 1st Class. Bruce Tozount, Damage Control, 3rd Class. The Coast Guard. Marines. Wayne Froling, Sergeant. Colleen Helfers, Auxiliary League. Rich Hoy, Lance Corporal. Valentine Yendro, PFC, 1st Class. Tony Lodel, Corporal. Norman Meyer, Staff Sergeant. Damon Pratt, Corporal. Richard Solars, Sergeant. Pete Steiger, Lance Corporal. Tom Wright, Corporal. Ivan Dvorak, Sergeant. Stanley Cook, Staff Sergeant. Danny Yerk, Corporal. Jerry Havens, Sergeant. Jeff Schulman, Lieutenant Colonel. Jerry Getz, Sergeant. The Marines. Air Force. Jim Andrews, Sergeant. Robert Bell, Airman, 1st Class. Patrick Clinton, Airman, 1st Class. Jerry Crone, 1st Lieutenant. Frank DePiro, PFC. Tom Driver, Airman, 2nd Class. Nicole Danowski, Master Sergeant. Richard Eichstead, Airman, 1st Class. James Herberstrosher, Sergeant. Jeff Hammer, E4. Elroy Hilbert, Flight Officer, World War II. Robert Karsten Sr., Staff Sergeant. Robert Kershke, Master Sergeant. Mike Moretti, Sergeant. Pat Paul, Staff Sergeant. William C. Piper, Captain. Todd Werner, Captain. James Wanneberger, Sergeant, E6. Robert Campert, Sergeant. Lovis Sost, Sergeant. Larry Maw, Sergeant, E6. Dane Sacco, Sergeant. Walter Zerba, AI. Marjorie Fitzsimmons, Airman, 2nd. John Gallings, Master Sergeant. Rolf Hartman, Tech Sergeant. David Inoris, Staff Sergeant. The Air Force. I know that history is a great thing, and it teaches all of us. There's one group that I want to mention. They were attached to the Navy, and during wartime, these individuals do great things. They're the Merchant Marine. Anybody that served and had them bringing supplies and that knows what I'm talking about. We don't want to forget them. Anybody that you knew that was in the Merchant Marine. If I've forgotten anybody, I apologize, and thank you.
At this time, the MCHS drumline has a special tribute to our veterans. Always a fan favorite here at Marengo High School. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Dan Bertrand, our Superintendent of Schools. He, along with the Board of Education, continue to strongly support this program. We appreciate all that they do for our kids. Please welcome Dr. Bertrand.
I want to thank Scott for all of his work in putting together this program, as well as everybody else that helped him. As you can see, it's another huge success, and we appreciate all of you coming. I wanted to just recognize one person that got missed in the roll call, and I'm sure it was by accident, but I happened to meet him along with Dr. Jordan when we were coming in, and one of our local Marengo vets got together some of his Vietnam vets, and a gentleman came from Tennessee to be here today, Staff Sergeant Robert Correo. Robert? I also want to take this opportunity to welcome and thank all of our veterans and joining us in honoring them, as well as those who could not be in attendance today. I especially want to thank my dad, who served in the Army in World War II, post-World War II, and he's home in Quincy watching us on IHSA TV. And he, as well as several of my uncles and cousins, as well as my Uncle Donald, who was killed in World War II, have served from our family. So I want to thank all of you for being here and for honoring them. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce some of our local dignitaries who were able to join us for today's program. As I introduce them, please hold your applause until the end. Representing the city of Marengo and the county, Mayor Don Lockhart, and he has his wife here today, Deputy Clerk Sally Millerman, City Councilman Corey Brockman and Carol Bartman, McHenry County Clerk's Office Jan Lloyd, representing the Marengo Police Department, Police Chief Joe Hallman and Sergeant Richard Solars, representing the Marengo Fire Department, Assistant Chief Steve Frazier, and there's a number of other firefighters represented in the back, I know. Marengo Union Elementary District Superintendent Leah Damish, Riley Elementary District 18 Superintendent Jerry Trickett, and Zion Lutheran Principal Mr. Bill Steltenpool. I want to thank all of them for joining us and honoring our veterans today. Our next distinguished guest will introduce our speaker today as Representative Jack Franks of the 63rd District. Representative Franks serves as the chair of the State Government Administration Committee, also serves on the International Trade and Commerce Committee, as well as the Consolidation Committee in the Illinois House of Representatives. He and his wife Debbie reside in our district and are alumni of our school, as well as their two sons who are attending our school right now, and we're pleased to have Representative Franks here today.
Wow. Good morning. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I want to thank Dr. Bertrand and Principal Shepard and the entire administration and faculty at the high school, as well as all the grade schools who showed up today. So when you guys were doing the Pledge of Allegiance, it gave me goosebumps listening to you. And it's really special for me to be part of this because this Veterans Day. My brothers and I all went to Marengo High School, my wife Debbie and all of her sisters, my dad and his family, and now we have Sam. This is his last year in high school. And Henry, hopefully, this will only have one more year, we're hoping. Sorry about that, Henry. On this Veterans Day, we pause from our daily lives to reflect upon the impact that veterans of America's armed forces have had on our nation's history. And it's critical that we remember the sacrifices of those who have served and those who continue to serve on behalf of our great nation. We are fortunate to have the greatest fighting force the world has ever known that allows us to live free and proud lives. If not for their sacrifices, the freedoms that we enjoy would not be guaranteed. The men and women who have served in our military and who continue to serve exemplify what's best in our nation. And we owe them all a debt of gratitude as we honor their service today. And please remember those who are currently serving all over the globe in your thoughts and prayers, because their sacrifice stands as a lasting testament to our freedoms. I just noticed something when I was watching Mr. Hilbert today. You stood up twice for both the Army and the Air Force. That's incredible. I just wanted to point that out. I just thank you for your service. And Joe, what you do with, thank you, Mr. Hilbert. And Joe Lewis, I want you to stand up because you're on the front lines every day for our veterans from Vietnam. You honor them every day, and we really appreciate your service. So thank you for doing that every day. Thanks. Today, I have the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker, who is a veteran of the United States Army. Robert Jordan Jr. is an author and a reporter at WGN Channel 9, but he's really much more than that. He's a doctor in philosophy and education and has received his minor in ethics from Loyola University in Chicago. He also has a master's degree from Northeastern Illinois University and a bachelor's degree from Roosevelt. That's a lot of time in school, I want you to know. He really is one of the most accomplished journalists that Chicago has ever known. He has written articles for the Tribune, and he has also written 2 screenplays. He's the author of award-winning documentaries, and he's really a very active participant in our community. He's been with Channel 9 for about 30 years, and he's earned the respect of his colleagues and all of us in the audience. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Chicago's very own Robert Jordan.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. Representative Franks didn't tell you that I also make my own furniture, grow my own food, and print my own money. Not really. But he was very kind to say those thoughtful things about me this morning. And it is really a pleasure to be here among you today, to see all of your smiling faces and realize that there is just a wonderful area outside Chicago that those of us in television in Chicago don't talk enough about. This is just a wonderful community, and it is such a pleasure, and I want to thank you for inviting me here today. And Scott, it's such a great idea. This is the 5th year for this wonderful program to recognize our veterans and those who have served in our armed services and whom we owe so much. And it is just amazing, and I want to thank you for inviting me out here today. Now, as a Vietnam vet, I represent the men and women who fought in a conflict, for those of you who are still in school here, a conflict that happened before you were born. So you can imagine how old our World War II veterans are, if I'm as old as I am, and there are veterans around who fought in World War II. Now, I'd like to ask those in the audience who are World War II vets to please stand, if I may. Congratulations to you all. You know, that's just a wonderful thing. I wish I had a chance to get to know all of you World War II guys. My dad fought in World War II. I do know one. It's a gentleman by the name of Anthony Nosey. Mr. Nosey, where are you? There he is right there. He's from Marengo. He's He's 95 years young, and his son, Tony, is a dear friend of mine who worked at WGN for a number of years. He was our executive producer. Tony told me that he took his dad to Washington, D.C. with his World War II hat on because his dad wanted to see the World War II memorial. He said, walking around the memorial, his dad was like a rock star. Said people kept coming up to him, wanting to take pictures and congratulating him, and that's so important because after World War II, the veterans who fought in Korea and in Vietnam didn't get the same recognition as those who fought in World War I and World War II. So it is so important that those of you here today are recognizing our veterans for the wonderful sacrifices that they have made. And so it is just a wonderful idea that you have this program today, because in all of our wars, our servicemen and women have been wounded or have been killed fighting to preserve our freedom. The ceremony today is intended to honor and thank all of those who served in the United States Armed Forces. In November of 1919, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day. That was to remember the veterans of World War I. Now, that was changed in June of 1954, and November 11th became a day to honor the veterans of all of our wars, hence Veterans Day. But you know, you ask any parent who has lost a child in combat, and they will tell you how painful that is. Any child who has lost a parent in war, any spouse who has lost a loved one will tell you that fighting for a noble cause is nonetheless heartbreaking. That's why we all know that war is hell. Ask any veteran who has fought in combat, and they will tell you that fighting to kill another human being, even your sworn enemy, is horrible. On our planet, we have fought wars as long as mankind has been able to show aggression towards another group. When you break it down and analyze the reasons for fighting wars, they have broken out over issues as basic as differences of opinions, differences in religions, claims on valued territory, or hatred because of another group which was different. Now, this is one of the reasons I'm so happy to speak to this group of young students today. Your generation has the power to prevent wars from breaking out ever again. Impossible, you say? No. It's essential, even crucial, that you do so. Thousands of years ago, warriors used to fight in close proximity, using knives and swords and spears and sticks. You had to be able to see your enemy if you were going to kill him. Even if you were using bows and arrows, you still had to see him in order to reach him. If you were out of range, both sides were in the clear. But, as we know, that was not the case. Next, rifles and cannons extended the range for reaching the enemy. A command during the Revolutionary War from Colonel William Prescott became famous when he said, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Since they were using muskets, which only fired one round at a time and then reloaded very slowly, you didn't want to miss shooting at your target. Then ships and tanks allowed fighters to reach targets over mountains and on the other side, out of sight. Today, airplanes and rockets can circle the globe to deliver a lethal blow that can wipe out an entire city. So what does this have to do with Veterans Day and this generation of young people? Remember, I said that you have the power to change what's happening and keep war from breaking out again, because you will be the leaders of tomorrow. Wars today risk ending life as we know it on this planet. So many countries today have nuclear capabilities that we have to make sure that we try to seek peaceful solutions to strife and turmoil. We have to learn that fighting has to be the last resort. Diplomacy, negotiation, being reasonable, and finding ways to ensure that peace prevails has to be our goal. When I was in the Army, I learned something that I want to share with the young people in here today. I was a medic, a surgical assistant. I worked in the operating room. I was there to assist doctors doing surgery. I would pass the instruments, fix up the sutures. I would retract the wounds so that the doctors could get inside and work on the organs or extract the shrapnel or do whatever had to do to operate. What quickly became apparent to me after operating on hundreds, maybe thousands of people was one thing. We are all pink on the inside. That's right. Once you make an incision and open someone up, we all look exactly the same on the outside, identical. We're pink. So now that you know that, think in terms of skin as just being a covering, like a shirt or a jacket. What makes us different is up here, in the brain, in our minds, and in our hearts. That's where people around the globe are different. Our neighbors today are not just on our blocks. They are the folks who we hang out with on the internet who live on the other side of the world. I have apps on my cell phone that can instantly translate a language spoken in the mountains of Thailand into English. Your tweets on Twitter and your blurbs on Facebook can reach thousands in an instant for good or evil. We all know people who are the so-called haters in your classmates. We all know people who are broad thinkers and peaceful. We know that haters are there because they are the ones we try to maybe avoid because they're like poison ivy and cancer. The mean-spirited words and deeds will eventually come back to bite us. So on this Veterans Day, as we honor those who have given their lives for the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, never forget that the next war, probably our last, if we are so unlucky to have another one, will be fought like a video game. Armchair soldiers using unmanned drone airplanes, rockets, and other means of mass destruction will be at the controls. We won't see the whites of their eyes. We won't even know if they are women and children, innocent or guilty. And they probably won't know that the bombs and rockets are about to fall on them. Their lights will just go out. And what's more, we pray that that scenario doesn't happen here on our soil. But as I said at the beginning, I have hope in this bright-eyed generation. We are placing our faith and our lives of our children and grandchildren in your hands. Use this Veterans Day and the programs like this to remember our veterans, the veterans of all the wars, so that we never forget the sacrifice they made to ensure our continued freedom. And also resolve that your generation will work to settle conflicts peacefully so that no more patriotic Americans will have to give their lives in defense of our country. Don't let us down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Marengo Community High School has begun the process of starting a Hall of Fame. We will be inducting the first class this coming spring. One of the categories is service. About 3 weeks ago, a good friend of mine, Weston Courier, a 1961 graduate of MCHS, came into my office, wanted to nominate two of his friends that had given the ultimate sacrifice for their country. As he told me the very emotional story sitting in my office, every year we try to add something a little bit different to the program, and as he was talking, and I knew it was late in the game, I thought we need to share this story with our students. They need to hear this story of two Marengo grads. Not that it's just these two Marengo grads that have given their lives, but these two Marengo grads that Wes was talking about in my office, it just really touched me. And so a week later, two students came up to me and asked, they said, hey, can we put together a video club? And I said, well, I got your first project for you, boys. And they took on the challenge, and 1 week ago, they started putting together this video, only 1 week ago. And this morning, we're going to share that video with you. So many times we see stories in the news of soldiers losing their lives, but it may not have the impact because we didn't know them. This is a story of two of our own. Two MCHS heroes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Weston Currier, a 1961 Marengo High School graduate and a veteran of the United States Marines. We are in the gymnasium of the former Marengo High School. Today is a very special day. It's a day set aside each year to honor and thank all veterans who served in our armed forces. Marengo High School has had hundreds of its alumni who have not only served their country, but unfortunately, many heroically gave their lives for our freedom. At the end of the video, all those alumni who gave the ultimate sacrifice will be shown. There are as many heartfelt stories as there are those who made this ultimate sacrifice. Today, I would like to share with you stories about two young men who were special to me, as they were my classmates and teammates in high school. They are Ernie Gallardo and Rich Fitzsimmons. Each of these young men already knew that they made their lives meaningful. They needed to make a commitment to something worthwhile, and then have the courage to follow through in that commitment. Both became American heroes. But before I present these stories, I'd like to first take a couple of minutes and give you a brief idea about what it was like to be a student at MCHS in the early 1960s. Perhaps as a result, you might get a sense of how our lives and our values were formed. I can say without hesitation, it was a great time to be in high school. To begin with, there were all those classes, and all had homework, most of which was completed on time. There was a high level of discipline with little tolerance for inappropriate behavior, along with tough consequences when we went astray. There were a number of extracurricular activities for one to engage in, including band, choir, student council, yearbook, and school newspaper staff, Future Homemakers of America, and Future Farmers of America. Each year we had school plays and a spectacular gym show that was orchestrated by Mrs. Gladys Miller, of which almost the entire student body participated in this fun event. Like many of us, and likely the favorite activities of both Ernie and Rich, were the sports programs. Unfortunately, in these times, there wasn't any competition with other schools for girls. Their only athletic opportunity was through their physical education class. However, boys were more fortunate. They were able to participate in 4 sports: football, basketball, baseball, and track. The high school's enrollment was about 500, and we competed in the Shark Conference. Our teams did reasonably well during this period. We had winning records in both football and basketball, and won the conference title in basketball in 1961. The baseball team was, as I recall, nearly unbeatable, while the track teams were always very competitive. Also, each year we had a competitive school decathlon event. We seemed to always have our share of above-average athletes. Chief among them were Ernie and Rich. Perhaps two differences between then and now in athletics were, first, we were without benefit of weight and speed training that are available today. We simply learned everything from our great coaches, Bob Motti, the basketball and track coach, and Rod Poppy, the football and baseball coach. Both were extremely talented men who were dedicated to developing us into the best athletes and young men we could be. Second, and perhaps most significant, there were no divisional classes that there are today. Schools of all enrollment sizes compete against one another to determine the state champion. Now that you have a sense of what it was like at Marengo High School in the early 1960s, I would like to introduce to you Ernie Gallardo. Ernie graduated from Marengo High School in 1962. He was born in Cotulla, Texas, and was of Hispanic heritage. He was the oldest of 11 children. He lived with his grandmother, then moved to Marengo in 1954, when Ernie was just 11 years old. Sadly, in the early 1960s, prejudice behavior was unfortunately very common, and Hispanics had a great deal of difficulty being accepted by many. I think maybe Ernie took this as a challenge. He was one of the kindest and warmest people that you could find. He was friendly to everyone, and he always tried his best at everything he did. Ernie studied hard in the classroom and took his education seriously. He was certainly blessed with a lot of athletic talent as well. I remember Ernie being about 5'9" and maybe about 135 pounds, but he was gifted with a high level of agility and quickness. He excelled in the basketball court, was an excellent shortstop on the baseball diamond, and was very good at running the hurdles and track. Ernie was also a pretty good quarterback for Rod Poppy's football team his senior year. He was a varsity letter winner for 3 years and actually lettered in all 4 sports his senior year, an exceptional accomplishment even today. Athletics wasn't Ernie's only outlet, however. He was quite an artist as well. He had a real gift of calligraphy. Many of us fondly remember Ernie for his painting our names on our sleeves of our letter jackets. He created them with his own special flair. The principal, E.C. Nichols, was so impressed with his work, he had Ernie design the diplomas for his graduating class. And as a member of the yearbook staff, he also designed the 1962 yearbook. Among his other activities in high school were his participation in the gym show, was a member of the thespian club, class play, and he was a staff member of the school paper. After graduating from high school, Ernie worked at local companies and helped provide financial support to his family until 1967, when he was drafted into the United States Army. He graciously accepted his responsibility to serve his country in this manner. His athletic ability and discipline got him through the tough boot camp training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, with ease. It wasn't long after his training, he was assigned duty in Vietnam, where he served 3 tours of duty. There he fully understood the value of preparation and training he had received both in high school and the military, and how important it was to always try his best in whatever he did. Now he and his fellow soldiers' lives were on the line, and he would need all that experience and training just to survive. He had several close calls during his combat duty in Vietnam and was wounded twice. Each time he was fixed up and sent back to the front lines. One story was that he always kept his rifle cleaning rod attached to his helmet. And while on one mission, a bullet ricocheted off that cleaning rod, only grazing his helmet and likely saving his life. But tragically, on August 29, 1968, while fighting on the front line his 3rd time and serving as a guard for his fellow soldiers, a mortar round landed close to Ernie, killing him and a fellow soldier instantly. Ernie received several medals for his bravery and service. Among them were 2 Purple Hearts. Interestingly, prior to his tragedy, Ernie had been in contact with one of his friends who was attending Southern Illinois University. Apparently, Ernie was planning to attend there after serving his country to pursue an arts degree. Unfortunately, that was never to be. Now I'd like to introduce you to Richford Simmons. Rich was of the MCH class of 1960. He grew up in Marengo and is the 2nd child of 4 in his family. Unlike Ernie, I think Rich was about 6'1" and weighed about 170 pounds. He was soft-spoken, was a good student, and an outstanding athlete. Rich was well-liked by everyone. He also had a bit of a challenge to overcome, as he had a stutter in his voice. However, he never got that never got in his way. He always tried his best, and as a result, excelled in almost everything he did. Rich was a fine receiver and a kicker on the football team. Coach Poppy told me that Rich was the best kickoff man he ever had. He consistently kicked the ball inside the 10-yard line and occasionally into the end zone. He was also a forward of the basketball team who had above-average jumping ability and could rebound with the best. Coach Motti stated that Rich was a good athlete and, more importantly, a good fellow. He was also a good outfielder on the baseball team. In track, he ran the middle distance races, threw the discus, and did very well at the high jump. Remarkably, Rich was a 4-letter winner both his junior and his senior year in high school. Also, he was always one of the top athletes in the school's annual decathlon competition. Among Rich's other high school activities were that he was in the student council and other clubs. After graduating from high school, Rich enrolled at Illinois State University in the fall of 1960. While attending ISU, he enrolled in the Reserve Officer Training Corps there. Interestingly, although not on an athletic scholarship, in his junior year, he had the courage to try out for this Division I school's track team, and he made it. He was a member of the team both his junior and senior year while specializing in the high jump. Upon graduating from ISU, Rich entered the U.S. Navy Reserve and shortly thereafter began flight school at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. After his graduation from flight school, he received his wings and became an official naval aviator in helicopters. He rose to the rank of lieutenant and received several medals for his service to our country. One was the prestigious Air Medal. This was for his achievement in aerial flight as a pilot of a helicopter who successfully completed 250 flight hours in direct combat support operations against the enemy while serving aboard the aircraft carrier, the USS Constellation. Rich and his crew were responsible for saving pilots who had crashed their planes on land or in the sea. He served 2 terms in Vietnam before returning to the States in San Diego, California for additional pilot training in helicopters. In many ways, it's unfortunately ironic. After flying all those dangerous combat missions, it is here in safe waters where Rich flew his last mission. On June 13, 1969, Rich and his team were called upon to fly a seriously injured crewman from a ship to the mainland for medical help. Apparently, this crewman had been blown off the flight deck of the USS Constellation by a jet fighter blast while about 90 miles off the coast of San Diego. The last transmission received from Rich was that they were going into the water. There were 3 crew members and 3 passengers aboard. Reportedly, a search for survivors immediately launched by 2 destroyers on maneuvers in the area, aided by 4 helicopters from the Imperial Beach Station, a Coast Guard helicopter, and a North Island Naval Air Station crash boat. Unfortunately, there were no survivors, and only Rich and one other body was recovered. The cause of the crash was never determined. You know, without a doubt, these former teammates of mine, Ernie and Rich, are true American heroes. We honor them today at their former high school on this Veterans Day of 2012, particularly for you, the current students, so that you can know them and understand how they made their lives meaningful. You see, it's not the length of time that you spend on this earth that is most important. It's what you do while you're here that really matters. Now that you know Ernie Gallardo and Rich Fitzsimmons, you can see that they are former students just like you, who took the same classes, joined many of the same organizations, and participated in some of the same sports. But above all, they are people who made a commitment to something worthwhile, had the courage to follow through with that commitment, and as a result, made their lives meaningful, and in their short lifespan became American heroes. They gave the ultimate price, sacrificing their lives for you, me, and all Americans, as did many other former students of Marengo High School, who bravely fought for freedom around the world. For that, we humbly thank them. Thank you, and may God bless you and your families.
All gave some gave all. Some stood through for the red, white, and blue, and some had to fall. And if you ever think of me, think of all your liberties and recall. Some gave all.
At this time, would you please rise and join me in a moment of silence, followed by taps, remembering those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. At this time, the 3rd through 12th grade choirs from Locust Elementary, Marengo High School, Marengo Middle, Riley, and Zion will perform the Veterans Day. After the song is complete, please God Bless America. As we watched the video, Weston Currier talked about 2 of his high school friends that had given the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam, Ernie Gallardo and Rich Fitzsimmons. Today, Rich Fitzsimmons' sister, Sue Mish, made the trip from Frankfort, Illinois to help us honor her brother. Sue, please stand. We want you and your family, along with Ernie's family, to know that we have not and will not forget the sacrifices that they have made. I want to thank the 2 MCHS students that made the video, Jacob Heimberg and Mike Zaransky. You guys did an awesome job. Thank you, State Representative Jack Franks and Dr. Jordan, for joining us here today. Again, I want to thank the Illinois National Guard for bringing in the helicopter. Veterans, we hope that you have a special day and understand that we do appreciate the sacrifices you have made for our freedoms. For those who have joined us online today on IHSA.tv, the Marengo area schools want to say thank you for your service and may God bless you. I would ask one more time for all the veterans that are here in attendance today, please stand. Thank you. All veterans and their families, you're invited to please stay. We have a reception. Please take time to look at the artwork and the signs that the students have made from the various schools here in town. Treats were made by our foods classes and the kitchen staff. And that concludes our program. And I just do want to remind you again that this program is on ihsa.tv. If you go to our website, or if you just tell somebody else to go to that website, they can watch this video at any time. It's on demand. Just click on it and the program will come up. We want this to have an impact, and we want this to really send a message that we care about our veterans and we appreciate all that they do for us. So at this time, that concludes our program, and thank you and have a great day. Yep, thank you. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Dean. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's just set them right here for right now. Thank you, too. He's a member of our post. Yeah. He's in Crystal Lake. We had about 12 rows for our two veterans. I can't see that. My dad worked for a while. Jerry, thank you. Nice job. I love Joe. I did not know that. I did not know that. In World War II? Wow. We're going to have Joe.
He's one of 3 from Marengo.
We should. It'll be on the website, I think.
Yeah, you can go to it.
I didn't know that. I'll see it's up to Joe.